Welcome to the latest episode of Lo-Fi Travel. The Vietnam Museum of Ethnology, Hanoi, Vietnam. Built in 1987, the Vietnam Museum of Ethnology showcases the cultures of the 54 ethnic minority groups living in Vietnam, plus some inevitable exhibits on King culture of the past. The museum has three main areas. The primary building shows the traditional costumes, instruments, language, crafts, and rituals of the various ethnicities. The secondary building expands beyond Vietnam to show the roots and presence of the various ethnicities elsewhere in Southeast Asia and the connections between them. The third area, and definitely the most interesting of them, is the outdoor garden, featuring full-scale dwellings built by various tribes as they would have done in their villages. The 54 ethnic minorities of Vietnam are an intriguing subject. Composing roughly 9% of the population and divided into dozens of subgroups, photographers and anthropologists have spent decades motorcycling the country, finding, meeting, living with, and studying them. Making up 88% of the population, Viet, or King people, arrived in the Red River Delta from southern China between 4 and 5,000 years ago. Some of the ethnic minorities were already present in the area, but many were not. Over around 1,000 years, the king conquered or absorbed indigenous groups until they became the overwhelmingly dominant culture, moving ever further south. In Vietnamese creation myth, the Dragon King of the South married O Cao, a beautiful northern princess, and she gave birth to 100 strong princes. However, missing his lowland home, he decided to return there. He left 50 sons in the highlands, where they fathered the tribes, and took the remaining 50 south, where they became the King people. Members of the Highland tribes are distinguishable by physical features, language, dress, and customs in that order. As an outsider, even when visiting them in their homes, some groups are more easily distinguishable than others. For example, the difference between Zhao and Hmong was obvious to me, but the difference among subgroups, red versus black Zhao, black versus green Hmong, etc., needed to be explained to me. Relatively speaking, Westerners have a lot of cultural and linguistic overlap. If you understand one Romance or Nordic language with a bit of relatively superficial study, you can understand a good part of them all. It was wild to me that people living on either side of a single mountain in northern Vietnam wouldn't understand each other or intermarry for hundreds or thousands of years. The origins and development of the related groups, their diasporas and distinctions, are a rich field of study for ethnographers. Based on language, there are 8 original peoples, if you will, who over the centuries have subdivided into the 54 plus we know today. Number 1, Hmong Khmer, including the Bana, Brao, Bruvanque, Cho Ro, Ko, Koho, Kotu, Zecheng, Hui, Kang, Khmer, Komu, Ma, Mang, Nong, Odu, Romam, Taoi, Zinmun, Zodang, and Stiang. Number 2, the Tay or Thai tribes, including the Bo-i, Zay, Lao, Lu, Nung, Sanche, Tay, and Thai. Number 3, the Tibeto-Burman groups, including the Kong, Hani, Lahu, Lolo, Fula, and Sila. Number 4, the Malayo-Polynesian groups, the oldest in the region, including the Cham, Churu, Edi, Zarai, and Raglai. Number 5, the Viet Muong, including the Chut, King, Hmong, and To. Number 6, the Kazai, including the Ko, Lao, La Chi, La Ha, and Pu Pio. The 7th group, the Hmong Zhao, including the Zhao, Hmong, and Pa Ten. And finally, the 8th group, the Han, including the Hua, Nai, and San Du. Because the museum was built in 1987, they're sorted slightly differently, perhaps in a way that's very slightly outdated, but with no glaring problems. It's still accurate and educational. They also have a section in the museum about the cultural exchange among the groups, which is a complicated and interesting topic. According to the museum, what the ethnicities have in common is their traditional way of life. Most of the groups rely on wet rice agriculture combined with raising poultry, hunting, and fishing. Handicrafts include weaving, forging, pottery, carpentry, And generally speaking, participation in commerce is limited, varies greatly among groups, varies greatly by how assimilated and wealthy the individual family is, and also by how much tourism has influenced their lifestyle. Most ethnic groups consider the village as the most important social unit. However, village organization, house styles, family structures, social hierarchies, and religious traditions are diverse. Beliefs of spirituality are the basis for many ritual activities, though elements of Buddhism, Catholicism, even Islam are practiced alongside traditional folk beliefs. The role of the ethnic minorities in recent history and their degree of assimilation to Viet, American, French, and Chinese culture, politics, and religion is left untouched at this museum. I was shocked to learn, for example, that many Hmong people are some degree of Catholic, and I had to visit them to learn that. It's not in this museum. Also, the Montagnards rather famously allied with the French during the Indochina Wars in exchange for the promise of an autonomous homeland, but their role in this recent history and in modern Vietnamese politics, where they are well represented in the Party Congress, is not explored. As for the museum itself, I think it's a good jumping off point, but rather too superficial. If you're coming in with a total ignorance of the topic, I'd recommend you visit the bookstore first, read up, then hit the museum to match the objects of material culture with the info and photos you've already absorbed. In terms of costume, jewelry, shamanistic, and cultural objects, you can see much of the same at the Vietnam History Museum and the Women's Museum. However, the Ethnology Museum really sets itself apart in the garden. If you're not going to make it to every mountain village during your trip to Vietnam, you can rest assured that the houses here are full-sized, rather luxurious to be honest, examples of dwellings built by the ethnic minorities themselves, who were paid dearly to come to Hanoi and do the job. The houses and the objects in them are the real thing and immense fun, especially for kids. The bookstore is also excellent, and the gift shop, while expensive, is a craft link shop. So it has excellent quality souvenirs made by the ethnic minorities and other underprivileged populations, ensuring your money flows back to them, at least in part. The restaurant employs students at a vocational school for underprivileged youth, training them for hospitality jobs, so it's certainly worth patronizing. Lastly, there's an excellent daily water puppet performance. I've been to the famous water puppet theater in Hanoi as well, and this performance is equally wonderful, if not better, and provides a booklet that helpfully explains each of the stories, which are hundreds of years old and well known by all, rather like Punch and Judy shows in the UK. If you have kids, this museum is a must-see in Hanoi. If you don't, it's not an absolute must. The information can be gleaned elsewhere, but I did truly enjoy it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.